Pro boxing fans, we are here in London at the Wasserman Boxing head office. First of all, Kalle, it is a beautiful place. I did come here a few years ago, actually. I can't remember what it was. It was some sort of media event. But yeah, impressive, man. How's things? How's life?
Yeah, we call it the Tower of Power in the Strand. Yeah, it's great. Lots going on, lots of events happening, lots of events being planned. Obviously, big fight week next week in Manchester with Harlem Eubank versus Jack Catterall on DAZN. Unfortunately, from a personal level, in August, a couple of events are going to be announced as well shortly. So, yeah, it's a busy summer, but love it. I can't complain.
Let's talk about that one in Manchester, because that's an intriguing fight. We were just talking about it in the other room. And firstly, there's a narrative that's getting played out that it's a good time for Harlem to be catching Jack. Obviously, he's moving up in weight, coming off losses and everything else. But do you feel like that is the situation, that it is the perfect time to catch a good fight in Jack Catterall?
It's a really good question, and it's one that I could give lots of answers to now, but we'll find out next Saturday night. I think that having guided, I think it's now up to 47 world champions over the last 27 years. I've always found that there's moments in a career where you've got to make that call to step up, and it's that moment for Harlem. We've worked hard as promoters, and him obviously in the gym and in the ring to up the level, and he's done that fight for fight. Coming through, tougher and tougher challenges, risen up to the world rankings now, and now it's that moment, So when the chance came up to fight, a world elite level fighter in Jack Catterall, it just felt right, and whether that's the right decision, we'll find out next Saturday. We're very, very confident. We believe we have the speed, the strategy, the willpower to go and do this, but ultimately we will find out in the ring next Saturday. It's a great fight. It's a great fans fight to watch, because I'm sure Jack Catterall will be the bookies' favourite, but at the same time, that's based on what we know about Jack Catterall, and I think we know more about Jack Catterall than we know about Harlem Eubank, and that's always exciting.
It is true. Obviously, if Harlem goes forward and just tries to stick it on him, it's going to be a very interesting fight, which he said he would want to do in that press conference.
He's going to use the speed. I mean, the speed is the element that will definitely be in favour of Harlem, and it's how you utilise speed in boxing, and which parts of the fight you're gonna put the foot on the gas, and which part of the fight you're gonna sort of take another role. That's going to be the interesting part.
That Eubank name carries so much weight in boxing in general. How much you want to sort of jump onto that? Obviously, if Harlem does beat Jack, you've got this Eubank who could potentially be going onto the world scene. A lot of people know of that name, resonates throughout all of the boxing world. How much do you want to be able to play on that name, and obviously not take advantage, but to let people know
promote
that.
It. Come on, let's address the elephant in the room. Yeah, of course, we're not going to not use it. That's his name. Yeah. No. So no, as a promoter, of course, we're going to jump all over it and shout it from the rooftops. But Harlem's different to junior, to senior. Every Eubank in his own right has been different. I've had the privilege to have worked, alongside senior in promotion. I was a big fan of senior growing up. I obviously had my many years with junior. People talk about the fallout. There's no real fallout. We had some great times together. We had some not so great times together. That's sport, and I have absolutely no problem there. I will look back on that with some very nice memories as well. Harlem's different again. I was also very, very proud to be involved in a couple of fights with Sebastian Eubank. So my working and my chapter in my little personal career with the Eubanks is a very lovely one, and I really, I'm in awe of senior. I totally respect what Junior's doing. He's a businessman. He's made the business fights, and that's what he's doing. And Harlem's trajectory is a different one again. You know, he's taken that route to a world title very seriously. He's seen this fight and believes it's the right one. We've backed him in that, and you know, we roll. You know, that's how I see it. But will we be shouting the name Eubank at the top of our lungs? Of course, that is his name.
Yeah, of course. Actually, talking about Chris, obviously British Boxing Board of Control are still sort of investigating the way he lost his weight and talking about the sauna technique that was put on social media. Eddie Hearn's come out and said, listen, look, maybe the British Boxing Board of Control need to get with the times. There is different methods that are safe now. Do you feel that is the case? That, you know, we know that fighters lose weight in certain ways. It might not put there.
Yeah, I mean, look, I've grown up around fighters. You know, I come from a family, a boxing dynasty family. My father's in the Hall of Fame, so I grew up in a household where there were fighters around the whole time in camps and etc. In fact, we had a gym in our house when I was growing up where fighters trained. Yeah, so I've seen it firsthand. You know, that weight cutting is done in all different ways over the years. But I'm not a medical professional to tell you now what's safe and what's not, and I'm certainly not in a capacity to do that. All I know is that a lot of fighters do use saunas in their training camps. Is it to cut weight? There's all different, you know, researches on what saunas do and what they don't do these days. There's also different types of saunas these days to when I started out. You know, there's infrared saunas. There's all different temperatures. You know, so it's not there's one type of sauna and it's totally different to another. Is it an infrared sauna, for example, is a totally different temperature and technique to a Finnish sauna? I'm not going to get into the technicalities of saunas here because, again, I'm not a sauna salesman and I'm certainly not a medical professional. But the fact is that baths, saunas, you know, sauna blankets, sauna jackets. So, you know, I think maybe the definition needs to be looked at, that's for sure. At the same time, is it around in boxing? Absolutely, it's rife.
Do you want to talk about Josh Kelly, actually? I've seen a few rumours, actually, that a big fight on a big stage potentially in September. Is there any chance of him fighting out in the States?
Yeah, look, I mean, the Murtazalia fight for the IBF World Championships in talks, but at the same time, there's lots of other avenues we're exploring. He is top of the world rankings in the WBO and very close to the IBF as well. So the mandatory's coming. So it's a little bit in the hands of the federations now as well to order certain mandatories, and you know, those big fights will come, and he fully deserves it. He's certainly part of what I see as the next generation of British stars that we'll see in the next year or two. Look, that fight earlier this month in Newcastle, you know, people forget he was a very, very, very strong opponent, given that it was a fight to keep busy, basically. Yeah. It was a fight while we're sort of treading water for the bigger fights. It was a very, very respectable opponent. He took him out in 36 seconds. I thought he took a dive. I had to go back and look at it, and the speed of that clip around the temple area was phenomenal. And I really had to super slow-mo it, and I get what people were saying online. Oh, he must have taken a dive or something. I mean, it was one hell of a punch. And you know, Josh is, you know, people who are in the industry, boxers who have been around since the Team GB days, everyone knows the talent of Josh Kelly. You know, it's everywhere. And, you know, it's now sort of come to that point where he's at the top of the world rankings. He's not the sort of guy that people are going to just throw a bone to and fight when they know, you know, this guy's very dangerous. So it's going to have to be a fight that we almost forced to make, you know. So it's exciting times.
It is exciting times. Actually, talking about fighters who have done the bit in the sport, Anthony Joshua has done his bit. Carl Froch, watching some of his bits, and he's saying, listen, maybe it's time for AJ to call it a day. Do you feel like, first of all, as a boxing fan, I'm not even a promoter, that if that AJ Tyson Fury fight happens, it'll just capture the public's, the British public, the world public's sort of awareness, and it'll catch the hype.
Yeah, look, as a promoter, it's a fight that, if it's made within the relatively near future, it's still an absolutely huge fight. It would definitely capture the nation. There's no doubt about it. It doesn't need to be for a world title. AJ versus Fury is representative of a whole generation of British heavyweights. Okay. So, that absolutely captures it, and it's a massive fight. But I also know the business of boxing just a little bit, and I think that fight is a very much a UK fight, and it will generate UK money. And if you look at the purses they've received in other fights recently, at least the reported purses, I don't think it's going to match that. So it's going to have to be a bit of, right, this isn't just for the money. It will still be massive paydays. But they have both earned very well, And at the same time, if both of them stop now and, retired to their families, I think no one could knock them, They've both done a lot for the sport, especially in the UK. Tyson Fury brought to an end a very long reign of the Klitschko era, which was no fault of the Klitschko's, was probably one of the most boring eras in heavyweight boxing because it was so dominated by them. And at the same time, AJ's done massive things for mainstream boxing in this country, It's been a while since, UK boxing's had someone on the front cover of GQ, Men's Health. You can't walk down any high street without seeing them in a window. So they've both done so much for the sport. So, it's down to whether they want to tango or not, But if they don't, all we can do is say, chapeau, well done, amazing. And they've both earned a lot of money and they've got great families, and, I'm sure they'll have beautiful lives, and they deserve nothing less.
At this point, though, with fighters who have achieved that much in boxing and are of that age, is it this sort of fights that wake them up, really? I'm sure they don't want to be fighting and building up for a world title fight and fighting through the necessary routes. So do you feel like the Tyson Furies and the AJs and the Usyks, these are the sort of fights that will probably just get them out of bed for potential last one or two fights?
Well, it's certainly not. It certainly isn't a money driver, is it? A money driver is when a fighter needs to earn a living. They certainly don't need to earn a living, both of them. So we could take the money out of the equation here. So if you're looking at it from a point of view of being a promoter, you'd be keen for them to take that fight. It's a big fight. You'd want to be promoting that fight. Again, taking away financial reasons, even promoters, we have things. That we can look back on and say, yeah, I've done that event. That's one that makes me smile, And people always think, bloodthirsty promoters, but we also we lose a lot of money, make a lot of money, and we try and balance the books at the end of the day. And of course, it's money, but at the same time, we also look at being involved in big fights. And I look at that, and I think that promoters, of course, will be pushing for that fight. Let's say the families of the fighters, the wives, the girlfriends, whoever it is, they'll probably be pushing totally against it, because, unless you're from the fighting world, you say, well, what, hold on, you've got loads of money in the bank, right, for a couple of generations at least, and you've got, they're both very with it still, so it's a dangerous sport. Why put yourself through that again? And I totally get that part as well. So I've got empathy for both sides.
So we get it when Froch calls Anthony Joshua's the cash cow for Eddie Hearn. That Eddie Hearn needs Anthony Joshua to carry on. Maybe needs him to have these fights.
I think that's an internal. That's definitely a back and forth between the two. I'm definitely not going to get sandwiched in the middle of that one. I've had my fair share of back and forths with Carl over the years, and no, Carl don't mince his words, and but Carl's not alone in saying that Anthony Joshua should retire. There's a lot of people out there who are saying that, so. And give, based on his last performance, I can understand why people are saying that. Again, put into the perspective of what he's done for the sport, what he's earned. You can't say those people are wrong. However, there's also another side to it, which is the AJ side, where he'll be saying, no, I've still got something to give, and only he will really know that. So, I don't think that. AJ will be listening to Eddie in terms of whether he should fight or not, and I don't even know if they've got that sort of relationship where Eddie will be telling him to fight. I can't imagine Eddie doing that. But at the same time, the stuff between Carl and Eddie is absolute popcorn. Absolute popcorn. Yeah, love it.
Just a final one before you go. The reason why I asked you about Josh Keddy was because there's rumours coming out potentially he could be on the undercard of the Crawford card in September in Las Vegas. Your face might say otherwise, but
no. I've heard the rumours, and we would love it. So I don't know if the powers that be are talking about it. Got no idea, but
it's just
right now I just say we spoke to the Murtazaliev side. We'd like to make the fight, but it's not there. It's not there at the moment, and if it's not there, I think they've got to fight Lubin with the IBF, and we'll go and do our thing, and ultimately we'll be ordered to fight the winner of that fight, anyways. But with the IBF, and we also have a WBO position that's coming up. So yeah, we're in a pretty good place.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you your thoughts on Canelo Crawford before I let you go. Obviously, a fight of the decades, that's what they're sort of making it out to be, and it's a fight that is going to capture, boxing world fight fans, attention. What do you make of this? A lot of narratives being played out about the weights. Is it the right time to catch Canelo? All these question marks. How do you see this fight?
I think you could argue it's the right catch to catch either of them. So I think it's a fascinating fight. It's a fight that I think's long overdue to be made, so credit to it being made. I think it's, you've got a real sort of US Latino flair to it, which is always exciting. If you look back at some of the other great fights, look at Mayweather Canelo. Canelo won't look too favourably back at looking at that fight, but how big that fight was at the time, that ended up being quite one-sided. I expect this to be an absolute. I think it'll be a proper war. I think that it's amazing that a platform like Netflix is going to push the sport that much around this event. I think people are overlooking that a little bit. I think if you look at it from a British perspective, a lot of people will be saying, well, how is that going to be this world event if there's no Brit featured in it? Well, I think if you've got Netflix on board, and they've got Dana White, who's obviously going to be using his platform as well. I'd say that that's a pretty good way to make a reach outside of the US market. So I have to agree. I think with Netflix on board, it's into a lot of homes. It's into a lot of homes, and will be given very relevant billing, so you won't be able to turn your Netflix box on without seeing Canelo Crawford pretty much at the top of it. So that again, I always look at these things from a boxing perspective and from a boxing industry perspective, and that is a win for boxing.
Actually, a final one, a situation that we're seeing in the UK with Sky Sports, who are probably the biggest broadcaster in regards to sports in this show, could be ending with their relationship with boxing, which means that if they want to stay in boxing, there is an open opportunity for others to sort of get onto that broadcast. Is there been talks with yourselves and Sky in regards to your fighters to feature on there, or some of your cards to feature on there? No,
I mean, look, Wasserman and Sky have a very close relationship over loads of different sports. Wasserman is the leading sports agency in the world, so there's a big relationship there already. There's a big relationship also with Comcast, the parent company over in the States. But at the same time, no, I think if word on the boxing street is correct, I think that contract only expires at the end of June. So, I get that people are making a big thing about it. I don't look at it as that dramatic a thing. I don't think that they were not partners in Boxer. There was a rights deal, and that rights deal is coming to an end at the end of June, and that's all that's sort of come out, So yeah, but at the same time, look, if Sky are looking for boxing rights and there's a seat available, it would be a fantastic opportunity. I think everyone in their right mind who's in boxing would like to have a discussion there, but I think it's very early in the day, and I'm sure they'll have a look at what strategy they do in boxing. obviously the Boxer deal didn't quite work out as planned, and okay, that's sports. But at the end, it's a lot of talk about Sky's pulled out of this partnership with Boxer, and it's not a partnership. It's a rights deal, and I haven't seen the contract, but given my 27 years of experience in the business and having worked with a lot of major broadcasters around the world, I've never had a partnership. I've always had a rights deal. And, you try and produce content, i.e. events that are relevant, that are driving what the platform wants to drive. And that's what they ultimately make decisions on. And, it's got to work for both sides, of course. But I don't quite get the whole hype around Sky ending a partnership, but it's not a partnership, so it's a rights deal.
All right, quickly before I let you go, how important is it that Sky stay with boxing? Because we know of the end.
Hugely important, because look, Sky have also got a massive platform around the live events with Sky Sports News. They've got a fantastic team at Sky. Who've been around since a long time, the likes of Ed Robinson, Andy Scott. I remember doing my first press conference with Andy Scott about 15 years ago in Denmark with Kessler. They've been around there. These are guys that I've worked with loads of different fighters over the years, and they're just real knowledgeable people, and we need to keep them in the business because they add to it. But Sky is a platform, given that they are also the home of the Premier League and the eyeballs of a nation. Let's not mess around here. There is Premier League and then there's other sports in the UK. It's just such a massive platform. So it'll be interesting to see what they do.
Cool. Kalle Sauerland, always a pleasure. Thank you very much for the invite at the offices, and no doubt we'll be looking forward to future announcements for your shows.
In the meantime, tune in next week.
Of course.
Eubank versus Catterall.
Of course.
Looking forward to that one.
Thank you.